Welcome to the Yoga for Empaths podcast. My name is Tara Kaur, and we're going to be diving into many different topics related to holistic health, the yoga lifestyle, energy healing, and so much more. So I invite you to bring your favorite cup of herbal tea, your journal, and create some space to relax. Let's begin. Welcome, beautiful souls. Thank you for joining me on another episode. And today we're going to continue doing our journal inspiration podcasts, where we dive into different exercises that you can use with journaling. And as I mentioned in my last episode, I love journaling. It's a safe space to explore, to expand, to write ideas, and to really release and see what is going on within yourself in black and white in front of you. And sometimes it brings a lot of clarity because we start to notice different patterns, different things that we might not have even realized because we were so embedded with that energy. So seeing it outwardly, externally, can bring some really deep transformation. And especially during these times, we are going through a collective transformation and definitely a personal transformation, which I will talk about in my next episode with some exercises. But today I want to talk about something very much tied up with transformation, and that is the word success. So even as I say that word success, take a moment to think what comes up within. When someone says the word success or feeling successful, what does that bring up within you, or what triggers you when you think about that word? And I think this is very important because when we start defining our own personal ideas and aims and goals of success, we can start really living a life where we are in purpose, in our own purpose, versus the expectations of those externally. And it is something that I think, especially when we're going through transformation, is very important to be extremely clear on, the idea of what success is and what we want to do with our lives and the choices we want to make in order to build and grow and expand in success, in what that means to us on a personal level. So I'm going to jump straight in. And I'm going to offer 3 journal exercises with some examples, with some reflection questions. See what feels right for you. Try some of these exercises a few times. I generally say try them at least for a week, making it a practice so that you can go even deeper into it and see what feels right for you and also what comes up. And the first exercise is something that I think is really important because we're going back to the roots of where our upbringing and our ideas came from when it comes to what success means as an adult. So the first exercise, I actually want you to go right back to a place in time in your youth, especially I think around the teenage years when most of us are thinking about what we're going to do with the rest of our lives when we finish our education, or we're making decisions for higher education, or maybe we leave school and we decide to jump straight into work. This is when I think a lot of us during the teenage years start to get ideas or start to get information or inspiration from others about what success as an adult is. So take yourself back to a time where you were deciding what to do with your life and write down exactly what you thought success was going to be as an adult. So a typical example is by this age I will get married, or by this age I will have a promotion or have this position in this job, or by this age I will have children. All these goal points that we have right at the beginning of our life, a lot of them are ideas that maybe other people gave to us, and it could be inspiration or it could be expectation or a bit of both. So write down what came up for you at a very key moment in your youth, before 18, and what you thought was going to happen in your adult life. And if you are actually in this age range in your teenage years, this is even amazing, even more better, because you can actually write down your list now and then later on compare it. So really explore those ideas and those expectations that you had of adulthood and what success meant to you. And what this is doing is taking you back to your past, to some of the roots, and you can write down where these expectations and thoughts came from. Maybe it was something your family told you that was good for you. For example, if your family always were doctors, for example, that expectation that you would be a doctor or any other profession, or if you come from a long line of women who had children early in their 20s or earlier, the expectation that you would have that, So sometimes a lot of this can come from external sources. So when we go right back to the root, we can start seeing and analyzing where these ideas came from. And we're looking at the past, we're rooting ourselves where it came from, and then we're also seeing how we projected that into the future. So that's part of the exercise 1. And as a final part for exercise 1, you can also write down, especially if you're maybe in your late 20s, in your 30s above, what came out for you? Which one of these expectations or goals became real? Which ones were satisfying or good for your life? Which ones were actually not right for you? Maybe you did try doing that in college and it didn't turn out to be something that you enjoyed. So start analyzing now where you are in your life, and also maybe a point in your life where you did have these realizations that certain goals that you had in your younger years were not right for you. I know when we have our Saturn return, which is typically around the age 27 to early 30s, this is a really big changing point, a big transformational point for many of us when we start to look at our goals and we start to realize that some of the things we thought were going to happen in our life in the early years didn't quite come to plan, or maybe some of it did and it wasn't exactly what we wanted or expected. So a lot of people around this age group, 27 to early 30s, start to have a big pivotal moment where they make changes or they have realizations. So if you are in that age group or coming up to that age group, big heads up, because the Saturn return is a big turning point for many people. And if you're older than that, you can maybe think back to that age group, 27 to, I would say, 31, and see if anything did change for you in comparison to your younger years when you were deciding things and making choices. So a lot to already explore in exercise 1, and I think this works as a beautiful foundation, because when we look at the roots of where our ideas come from, we can start working with where we are now and make the choices now. And also we can break old cycles. Maybe there were old cycles in the past that we thought what meant success for us that really didn't, for whatever reason. So a lot to go through. Take your time with exercise 1, taking yourself to the roots and your projected future. And exercise 2, we're going to dive in deeper. And this time I want to explore needs and values in this present moment. So we've done the past in exercise 1 and the roots and the different points in time in the past. And now I'd like to take you right now to your needs and values. So what really matters in your life? I think this is another important area to work on when it comes to success, because when we get our needs, or we get very clear about our needs and values, we can match what success means to us, whether it's on a personal level or on a work level, or a bit of both, or everything, I'll give you some examples of where people did things, became quote-unquote successful in that area, according to what society looks at as successful, and then it didn't match their needs and their values, and they decided to change. So I'll start off with a personal example. So in my early 20s, when I was starting off as a therapist, I always thought success was going to be having a practice in a corporate area and managing a team of therapists, like a really concrete brick and mortar business, and something that I can say, look, this is what I've achieved, a successful physical practice. Similarly to a lot of people who are yoga teachers, dream of having a yoga studio one day. That sort of idea that maybe success was having this business to show for. So it did happen in my early 30s. And I had a successful business on London Wall, a financial district, very corporate. And I started to realize that although I loved working with my team of therapists and it was going really great, I started to realize it didn't quite match my own needs and values for my own work, and on a personal level as well, because I was getting burnt out. I was spending a lot of time managing others, bookings, etc. for other people. Whereas one of the reasons I thought I was going to, be successful in this was I thought I was going to meet my needs and values for my own work, to have time for myself, which didn't really happen as much. So this was one of the biggest turning points where I realized even if I did have this successful business and I did have an amazing team of therapists, I had to make a choice whether or not it was matching my needs and values. And I truly wanted to spend more time on my own work and developing myself as a therapist and as a yoga teacher. And of course, when you make big decisions, sometimes big changes have to happen. And this is when I actually decided to let it go, which shocked a lot of people because they thought, hold on, this is a successful business. You have an amazing team, etc., etc. All these boxes were ticked, in terms of what outwardly looked like a success, but didn't quite match my own needs and values. So that was one turning point in my early 30s, where I decided to make some radical changes with my work life and also with my personal life because I was getting quite burnt out. In the process, I have no regrets because I actually met a lot of amazing clients and a lot of therapists, and I got a lot of inspiration and insight on how to run a business. And, there is no such thing as a bad decision. I think sometimes we make bad decisions, but ultimately we learn so much from it, or we gain so much from it, which I definitely did. And another thing that I saw when I was working, and I continue now to work as a freelance in this part of London, a very common thing that I see with my clients who, some of them work in very high position jobs in a corporate ladder. A lot of them come to me and they say to me, I have an amazing job, I have amazing income and all of these sort of things, but I'm starting to realize my values and my needs are not being met because I initially wanted to have that position so I would have more freedom or have this or that, and it didn't quite work for me. And this was a very interesting realization for me, especially in, I would say, the last financial crash of 2008 to 2012, that period when I was heavily working with a lot of bankers and people in finance. I started to see how they made radical shifts in order to meet their needs and their values in their work. Some of them completely quit. They decided it was no longer right for them and went on to do other things and became successful in that because their needs and values became much more clear. And similarly, I think in this time, post CV, or even right now in the middle of all of this pandemic, a lot of us are having realizations that we've built something and it doesn't match our needs and values anymore. Maybe it did in the past, maybe it served its purpose, but maybe it's now time to move on. So, very long introduction for exercise 2 but I want you to write down in your journal what your needs and values are and be very specific about it. Again, it can be personal, it can be work related, but write down a list of what you need when it comes to feeling fulfilled in, let's say, a relationship or in the work position that you hold. And also write down your own things that you value about yourself. So maybe your skills in the workplace. What did you gain so far? Even if it wasn't the perfect job or the perfect career, you've gained a lot of experience and valuable skills for the next stage, so nothing is lost. As well as a relationship that maybe you feel doesn't meet your needs and values. Maybe you can change the dynamic so it does, or maybe you can get more clear with your next partner about what your needs and values are. Write down a list, be very clear, and see where this ties in with your idea of success. Does it match? Does your idea of success, whether it's personal or work, match your personal needs and values? So again, another exercise with a lot of information. Take your time again, because I think this is another foundational step to building success in your life. And lastly, the third exercise, another jam-packed exercise for your journaling, is, well, we can't talk about success without talking about failure. And a lot of people even decide not to do certain things in their life because they have that deep fear of failure. As I mentioned in the last step or the last exercise, that we never fail really. We go through life, but we gain a lot on the way, even if it wasn't the right situation or the right job or the right relationship, etc. There's always something we can gain from it on a positive note. So, third exercise, I want you to write down, what does fear or what does failure mean to you? What does failure mean to you? And also, I want you to write down, what's the worst thing that could happen? Really confront your fears when it comes to fear of failure. What's the worst thing that can happen if now you decide to take a small action step forward in the decisions to make a successful life for yourself, in whatever definition that means to you? What's the worst that could happen if for one reason or another you fail in one of the steps or the next step? Taking it in baby steps. What would be the worst thing? And I think when you write it down and you see it in black and white in front of you, it doesn't actually seem that scary, because when you write it down, you can actually see, okay, I can work with this solution, or maybe I can have a plan B in case this happens, etc., etc. It's never really that bad, I think. So, what is the worst thing that could happen if you decide to launch this business? Or what is the worst thing that could happen if you decide to take your relationship to the next level? I don't know, whatever it is that you're focusing on. Write it down, explore it, really face it, and release. It helps with releasing. And as you're doing this, the next step for this exercise is also to look at some very concrete actions that you can now take. So we've done your reflections from the past and your roots. We've done what your needs and values are, and now what is it that you can now start to do? So if you've always wanted to build, this is a very classic example right now. Let's say you've always wanted to change your job. You can't stand your job. What can you do now? Maybe your idea of success and your values is tied up with your skills in certain things that you've learned from your current job. So the next stage might be to start sending out CVs to other people, to other companies, and really get clear in sharing what your skills and your values are and what you've learned. This is something that's coming up a lot because a lot of people are changing their career paths right now because of the global changes that are going on. On a personal level, maybe in a relationship or a connection, something is not working out very well. So, what is the next step? Maybe to talk to them, maybe to write down a letter to them, to share what has changed for you. But yeah, just taking the next step, I think, is very important. And to end this last exercise and to end this journal inspiration, I want you to think back, again, going to the past, into a time where you did fail and what you learned from it and how you dealt with it. And if it did happen again, which I'm sure it's not, but if it did happen again and you did fail for whatever reason in your next step, I want you to write down, how you can cope with it now. Maybe you've learned something from the last time you failed. All of these things, I think, as a reflection and as a journal exercises together, will be something that I think will be evolving and changing. And as I said, this will grow and expand the more you spend time on each of these exercises. And it's also a reference point. So in future, you can always look back and read what you wrote and see again if it matched where you are or where you're going to or the next choice you're going to make. So I hope this inspires you, and I will have full details in the blog post. See the description below. See the blog post connected to this podcast, and there will be more information and inspiration there. So thanks for taking the time to listen, and I will be back soon with another journal inspiration, this time more specifically about change, transformation, and transition. So I look forward to sharing more with you soon. Take care of yourselves. Have a beautiful day. Sat Nam.